Hello again, it's Miss Jones from Sew with Miss Jones. We're going to practice your hand stitching today, and in order to do that you need to have some of your scraps, and I'll tell you how big to cut those in just a second. You're going to need your little bag that has your needle and your embroidery floss in it. You need a pair of scissors, and you need your guide sheet. And this is a little piece of cardboard. You don't have to use cardboard. You don't even have to do this step, but I'm going to tell you it makes working with floss a whole lot simpler. So I'm going to start by undoing this, and I'm going to use my paper scissors, not my fabric scissors. So I'm just going to cut that apart. And I have my embroidery floss right here. So I'm going to move some things out of the way for right now, and we're going to take a look at your embroidery floss to start with. Okay, I'm going to take the two little slip things off the end like that, and if you'll notice, this is a circle. See how that is? And I want to tell you, if you just start pulling on this, you're going to have it's going to be a big pain. This is where the cardboard comes in. I'm going to find one of the ends, because there should be two different ends, and I'm actually going to slip this on my wrist. And I'm trying to keep it away from my watch. If you have a watch or bracelet on, you might want to take it off completely. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little piece of cardboard. You could use a piece of paper that's folded up so it's pretty thick. You could use a note card that's folded in half, just so it's a little bit thicker. This is just a chunk of a box that I had around the house that I cut a chunk off. All right, so what I'm going to do is, leaving it on my wrist, I am wrapping it around and around here. And this is to help it keep from being tangled. At school, sometimes what I will do is, if somebody empties a spool like this one's got thread on it, but say this was empty, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just wrap my embroidery floss around that, because that helps me keep it from being tangled whenever I am working on with it. If you just grab the end and start pulling, you're going to have a big nasty mess. And if you notice, my loop's getting smaller. Again, I'm trying to keep it away from my watch. And around and around and around. We're almost there. I think my puppy's mad because I'm not paying attention to her right now. She's whining a little bit. Alrighty, I'm almost done. Okay, I've got it all wound up. This stuff's going to go in the trash. Right, so then one of the things that I need is my needle. I'm not going to take it out yet. And I need my pieces of scrap felt. So what I've tried to do is take the smaller of the two pieces, is not quite 3 inches long, and that's just because that's how big my scrap was, but you need to be somewhere between 2.5 to 3 inches long to practice with. And then my gray piece is just a little bit bigger than that, so that I have an edge to connect to. And I'm going to take a pin. You might need to put 2 in, just because you may have smaller ones than me. I'm just going to put 1 down the middle. And so I have my piece like that. And that's where I'm going to do my practice. Okay? So let's get our needle ready. Here's a thing. Once you take your needle out of here, you should never lay this down on the table by itself. It will disappear. And this needle is a really nice one with a big eye. This is meant for embroidery. So this is going to make it a whole lot easier for you to do your work. And you're probably wondering, well, Miss Jones, why do you have your stuff sitting on a pillow? For a couple of reasons. One of them is it helps me keep it in the frame. And the other reason is it's a little bit closer to me while I'm doing this work. So I need a piece of thread. Remember, I'm not going to lay that down, so I'm just going to stick that into the edge of my fabric to hold on to it for the time being. And then I'm going to measure out a piece of thread that goes from my fingertips up to my elbow. Really don't make it much bigger than that because this is a good size piece of thread. If it's much longer than that, you're going to end up with problems. So I'm just going to clip it, and then I'm going to set this aside. Now, our project, this has 6 threads in it. That's what Embroidery Floss does. It has 6 threads. Let me see if I can, I want to go in a little bit. Here we go. So it has 6 threads, and we're going to only use 2 at a time. That means we've got to separate this some way. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you grab the 2 ends and pull like this, just pull them apart, you're going to end up with a knot about halfway down. So there are a couple of things that you can do that'll make this just a little bit easier to do. Let me come out here just a little bit. Okay, so remember 2. There's 6 here. We're only going to use 2. 2 into 6, or 6 divided by 2. That means we're going to get 3 chunks of thread out of this. So I've got 2 of them right here. I have 4 of them right here. And what I'm going to do is I can very carefully, if you notice I'm grabbing onto this at the bottom. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want this to get all tangled up. So I have the 2 up here in my hand, 2 of them here, 4 of them there. And I'm going to pull that apart, and I'm just sliding my finger down that and keeping it from tangling as I go. So there's a chunk, 2 threads. Now let's just practice that again, because remember, we don't want to accidentally use 4. It'll make your project look uneven. All right, so now I have 2 and 2. I'm going to put both of those in this hand right here, and then I'm going to take my other hand, and I'm just sliding that through my fingers. Sliding it through my fingers until I get down to the other end. So I now have 3 chunks, and I'm just going to set those off to the side because I'm going to use them later. And then I have my needle all ready to go. So first of all, I want to tell you, I don't like licking the end of the needle. It makes it kind of nasty. And in class, if you ever lick your thread and then you want me to help you, I won't do it because I don't want to touch your spit. And I'm not going to spit on it because you wouldn't want to touch my spit. So here we go. There are 2 different ways that you can thread a needle. One of them is called threading the needle, and the other one's called needling the thread. So when you're threading the needle, you're going to hold it really close to the end. Let me see if I can scoot in just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm really, really close to the end. You don't want a big flappy thing like this because it's like trying to put a piece of cooked spaghetti through the holes in or the eyelet holes on your shoes. So I'm going to hold it really, really close to the end. Then I'm going to put it right next to my needle. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to mush the ends together. This is hard for me to do so far away from my face. I like to do it a whole lot closer to my face. All right, I pushed it through. I got it through. My fingers are still there. Before I let go, I'm going to pull straight through. Okay, let me try that again. All right, so I'm going to hold it really close to the end, just like that. And if you need to, you can push the 2 ends together, or if they're really fuzzy, you can take the scissors and clip them off. And then you push through both ends and you keep your fingers going and grab it on the other side. That's one way you can do it. That's called threading the needle. On the other hand, one thing that I've seen other people do is they hold the thread in their non-dominant hand, again, real close to the end, and they take the needle in their dominant hand, and this is called needling the thread. So what you do here is you get the needle right on top of the thread, and this is a little harder for me because I don't usually do it this way. Yeah. This is when I'm going to clip. Oh my goodness, I put my needle down. All right, so I'm going to push it on my thread. Okay? And then again, you grab it as soon as it's on the other side and pull it through. So you can either thread your needle or needle your thread. Now, okay, now it's time to tie the knot. When I was first learning to sew, I was taught to make pretty tiny knots because my teacher wanted my knots to be pretty on the inside. Of course, not show on the outside. Knots should never go on the outside unless you're doing French knots, and then they're on the outside. So here's what I do. I'm going to take my thumb and my finger of my dominant hand, and I'm going to grab the end of the thread. And I'm going to wrap it around 2 times. Okay? And then I'm going to pretend like I have something kind of gooey on the end of my finger, and I'm going to rub my fingers back and forth and back and forth and back and forth till I get to the end. Now I have a little loop underneath my finger, and I'm going to pull back, and I've got a big ugly knot. And that's okay, because it's going to be on the inside. Nobody's going to see it. I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to take the end of my thread in my dominant hand between my finger and my thumb. All right, I'm close to the end. I'm going to wrap it around my finger twice, and then just think about having something gooey between your fingers, and you're trying to wiggle it off your fingers. Okay, I now have it almost off the end of my fingertip, and I'm just going to start very gently pulling back until I have a knot. And it's big and ugly. Now, this is not the kind of knot that I learned how to make when I was first learning how to sew. This is one I had to learn later when I was teaching, because it was hard for kids to make a small knot, and that's okay. This one is a lot less likely to pull through. So we are good to go. I've got it.